You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Leanne Brooke-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their wildness and actualize their deepest gifts. And the next way you can walk that path is by joining Waking the Wild Masculine coming this September. A man's true power is alchemized through the depth of his purpose and the degree to which he has sovereignty over the direction of his life. However, almost all men today lack the guidance, support, and initiation to create that purpose and sovereignty, which is why Jonathan has been called to lead another potent circle of men through a journey of wild masculine reclamation, including a vision quest. Go along to primalhappiness.co/WTWM to discover more about Waking the Wild Masculine, arrange a call with Jonathan to explore if indeed it is aligned for you, and to claim your place in Sacred Circle. And before we dive into the details for this week's show, I wanted to let you know that this is the last episode, not forever, don't worry, just for a few weeks. Jonathan and I are taking the entirety of August off work. In other words, we're already away, and this episode has been released by our team in our absence. The next episode will be with you in the first week of September. Until then, have a wonderful August. And now, on to this week's show. It's with the infinite couple, Richard and Sri Namaste. Barbara and Sri are spiritual leaders, relationship alchemists who created a potent pathway to sacred love, business growth, and spiritual alchemy. They have worked privately with some of the most exciting individuals and couples throughout the globe. In today's show, we explored Richard and Namaste's work, which is based on the philosophy of men having no inner feminine and women having no inner masculine. We explored how they arrived at this controversial position, how we can express our full range from the yin to the yang, how they see it's beneficial in all kinds of relationships with the opposite gender, what this means in terms of other sexualities or genders, and lastly, why they see this is something beyond a regressive return to stereotypes and 1950s style marriages. I also asked the members of our Facebook group if they had any questions they'd like me to ask Richard and Namaste on this topic. I had some really lovely comments and questions, and I picked a couple of the really juicy ones, and I did put them to Namaste and Richard, so we can look forward to hearing what they said on those things. And thank you so much to all of you who commented. I really do appreciate your engagement. This is one of the most, I guess on the one hand, can be quite activating conversations I've had on the show for a while, but really, really helpful. I think it really gets into the kinds of things that typically are held in shadow because we don't dare to go there and talk about them. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I think you will too. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the show, Richard and Namaste. I'm delighted you're here.
Oh, we are so happy.
We're glad to be here as well. Thank you for having us.
Oh, honestly, I've been so looking forward to this show. It's been since we had our conversation a few weeks ago. It's been something I keep having. I guess thoughts or conversations with people, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna be a really juicy thing to get into on the show. So I've been saving some things up. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
So I would love to just start with having a bit of an understanding what's led you to having what some would consider quite a provocative. We talked about how you can be quite triggering. How did you arrive at this way of seeing men and women that you do, where you really have this clarity and very unashamed way also of talking about this, which I love, of men, all masculine, women are all women, all feminine. How did you arrive there? What's your story?
Yeah.
Well, when we first came across that concept and we heard it, it just didn't sit right with us. We're like, wait a minute. Well, fundamentally, we believe that, form follows function, and so when you look at the masculine and men, there are over 6,000 differences between men and women, genetically, chemically, the way we process our thoughts, the way we look at life, the way we respond to things. We are fundamentally different. We're complementary, but we're not overlapping where it's like I'm part feminine, you're part masculine. I tell people all the time, when I want to get in touch with my feminine, I do this. I reach to the side where Namaste is, and I am in touch with my feminine now because she is that.
Yes, yes, vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting because our background and where we come to this masculine men, feminine women, and them being aligned in that way, is basically rooted in spirituality and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And it did not occur to us that there was another paradigm, if you want to call it that many people were operating under, until, we kept hearing people say, well, everybody has both. Well, everybody has both. And we would look at each other and we go, why does everyone seem to think that everyone has both masculine and feminine inside? I don't understand why everybody thinks that. It's not true. I don't know why people are saying that. Like, where did that come from? And we were talking to a woman who is, she does a lot of work around the masculine and feminine. And she was saying the same thing. And I was like, and I said, no, that's not true. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, I am 100% feminine. I have no masculine. I have yin and yang energy, but my essence is feminine. Baba's essence is masculine. So we don't look at the masculine and the feminine as being energy. Energy moves or flows or it stops or it's projected or it comes back. So that's yin and yang. But when we're talking about masculine and feminine, then we're talking about your essence. And she said, well, most people are approaching this from a more Jungian perspective. And I was like, that's where it started, because we love Jung. He's amazing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, me too.
Like his whole library of materials, the red books, the black books, like all of them, right? And I was like, that's where it started. Most people are coming to their ideas as far as the masculine and feminine from his work or from a derivative of his work and his ideology, and we aren't. We are actually going much further back than you, and we're also taking it from the perspective that if you just look at the etymology of masculine, it means literally that which pertains to the human adult male. And the word feminine literally means that which pertains to the human adult female. So when you really just look at the word, what we're talking about.
There's no equivocation there. It says what it says, and that is what it is.
Yeah.
But and I think there's a nuanced thing here where so many things people are approaching from the standpoint of how I feel about it. As if that would change fundamental definitions. It's like, this masculine, men being masculine and women being feminine, that carries an isness to it.
Right.
Now, you can feel some kind of way about that and say, well, I don't like it. Okay, well, don't like it, but you don't change the definition because you don't like it.
Oh, I love that. Yes. And that's such a helpful distinction to make, because for all kinds of reasons, wounding, conditioning, all sorts of things, people can hear what we're talking about here and have a visceral reaction to it, which then can lead them to believe that means it's wrong, as opposed to it's something that they're having a feeling about. So yeah, I think that's a really helpful lens. Do you think, just as a slight tangent, because I love Jung too, do you see that he was just mistaken on this, or do you think the way that he perhaps was seeing it and speaking about it has been maybe extrapolated or misunderstood to become how people are now talking about it as being inner masculine, inner feminine?
Oh, I love that question. That's so beautiful. I think he is, I think in some things he was not 100% correct. He was a work in progress. Even he acknowledged that, and his body of work as opposed to just a quote, right?
Or cherry picking.
You can definitely see his own evolution in his work, because when you are devoted to a work, you are going to see it evolve over time. So he gained clarity, and there are things in his latter works that are very different than what he said in his early work, right? So there's definite some things that were a work in progress, so to speak, and it was still going. And then there's other things that are just a matter of a misunderstanding, that his work is not, originally in English. That's number one, right? He wasn't like, that's not his big thing, right? And then we look at, what are people taking away from it? What did he mean when he said that? And is what you are interpreting it to mean the same thing as what he meant when he said it? And I think, more than anything else, I guess I'd add a third leg to that stool, because everything is treble in principle, right? So I'd add a third leg to that stool, which is simply that he, not only is it what did he mean when he said that, but how clear are you being in the application of it? In other words, he was speaking in a very specific construct as well. It's like when someone takes things that come from pathologies and they try to normalize it. Like, you recognize that what we're talking about is someone who was studying this for the sake of understanding not only the human psyche, but the pathology of that psyche. And now you're like taking that small data point and doing it writ large everywhere. So of course there's going to be a deviation from how he intended it to be practically applied and practically used. And I, we always say effectiveness being the measure of truth. Is that understanding of masculine and feminine? Is it effective? Is it benefiting you? And if it's not, then it's time to reevaluate.
Oh, beautifully said. Yeah. So much has just come to mind as you've said that. So I guess just as how, for example, you were just talking about yin yang, and someone hearing you talk about that could just think, oh, well, she does just mean masculine, feminine. Same, for example, when Jung's talking about anima and animus. Oh, he's just talking about it. It's so easy to overlay things and make things mean what you want them to mean. So that's, and I'd love to get a bit more into what you do mean about the yin yang in a moment. But I remember when we spoke last time, I said something to you like, did you create this way of teaching because you felt like it was a kind of, it had power, it had clarity, therefore it was just the best way you found to teach? Or is it because you actually do see it, this is how it is? And you said something like, well, originally it kind of it was more what made sense, was how you were teaching. Then there was a point where you actually went, no, it actually is this way. And then you said something similar like, and the fact that it's effective is a measure of the fact that it is true. And I love that, again, similar to what you were saying, Richard, is in like we can have feelings about all kinds of things, but there are some things that work because they are just how they work. Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is so refreshing. It really is. So if we come to what you were just saying about yin yang, how do you see, Namaste, the difference between saying, say, for example, me as a woman, what's the difference between my yang versus my masculine versus saying I have a masculine?
You have a masculine, yeah. The difference is that whenever a woman starts talking about being in her masculine, what she is doing, if she has a man in her life, it begins to displace masculinity as belonging to men. It presumes that I can even know as a female and as a woman what that is. How could I? I've never been a boy. I don't have those, like Baba Richard was talking about, those 6,000 differences. I'm not wired in that way. It presumes much, you know, and so, and it's unnecessary, because what she's really trying to express is the range of her feminine, which doesn't require the co-opting of a masculine. In other words, as a feminine being, I have that aspect of me that is dark, and that is still, and that is more quiet, and that, you know, those more yin aspects. Okay? I always consider that to be like the dark side of the moon that's never seen. Right? And then I have that aspect of me that is young, and that is more active, and that does stuff and takes on things and creates and may even have a vision and can say, yes, it's time to do X, Y, or Z, and I'm gonna lean forward, I'm gonna lean in. But in that full range, I never leave the field of femininity. You know, and then I believe that a lot of where that misunderstanding is because of a lack of understanding as far as the full range of the feminine.
Yeah.
I used to be a doula. I watched mamas give birth to triplets without any medication. Okay. I've been in corporate, and I've seen women in their feminine do amazing things. I've done amazing things, and never leaving the field of femininity, and not needing to do the amazing things, and being absolutely supported and encouraged and complimented by the masculine in the form of men, and most specifically in the form of my husband. You know, so I think that it's about allowing that positional distinction.
Oh my goodness. I got chills a couple of times when you were talking, which is usually a good measure of truth. But particularly when you were saying about that co-opting, that really hit me. There's a kind of like a disrespect or a distortion in what you're talking about, that kind of co-opting the masculine in the way that you're saying, like, wow, there was something, the way that you said that really hit me. Like, it makes so much sense that it is a co-opting of something. And going back to what you were saying about Jung's work, a kind of out of context, trying to understand something within a completely different context. And it isn't even the thing that it started out as. Yeah. My goodness.
People looking through the wrong end of the telescope, I think, and not allowing both the masculine and the feminine to be recognized as being whole and complete and entire.
Yeah.
You know, if a man picks up a baby and kisses it and holds it and is nurturing towards that baby, that he's not being feminine. He's just nurturing his son or his daughter, you know, and holding them and loving them, but that's not feminine. He's still in his masculine in doing that.
Yeah.
Because it is in him to lead, to guide, to protect, to provide, to watch out for. You know, it's like, that's masculine. He didn't have to be feminine to do that. Not in any way, shape, or form. But I think that when we start looking through the wrong end of the telescope, we want to make it small, and therefore, you know, we start annexing and encroaching and saying, well, you know, I need this, so therefore I am in my masculine. Or, you know, a lot of men are saying that these days, you know, I'm like, please, no. Oh, the masculine is plenty big enough because it has range as well.
Right, exactly.
To accommodate all sorts of actions and activities and ways of being without the necessity of labeling those things as being feminine.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that whenever a man is expressing those things, I say it's being in his feminine, which makes love and tenderness the providence of women and of the feminine. The only way for you to really be loving is if you are female and if you are feminine, and that's not true. You know, now it may look different. It may express differently, but that capacity for love, for compassion, for tenderness, for understanding, for connection is held both within the masculine and the feminine. And it's not necessary just like the capacity to do difficult things and hard things and to be disciplined is held in both the masculine and the feminine. So you don't need to co-opt the other to have access to that. And actually by doing that, that ensures that you end up in this competition with each other. You know, that's totally unnecessary. He will always out-masculine me.
Mhm. And to that point, I think that there's a place to recognize, and we're not diminished by acknowledging either our ignorance or our lack of a particular thing. I have no idea what it's like to have a uterus and what goes along with that. How to look. I don't know how to look out of my eyes as a feminine being. I just there's no utility there for me.
Yeah.
I can only do what I can do. But in so doing, I can also acknowledge what I am not and be comfortable with that.
Which is true diversity.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true diversity is the ability to acknowledge what I am not and to celebrate you for being that. Right? That's really what diversity is about. And I think that it's really beautiful when it happens in that space between men and women.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness, I love this so much. So, I'm trying to pick between the 5 different questions I want to ask you. So, firstly, would you define when you're talking about, say, for example, the feminine or the masculine, from this lens of both have that full range? What do you see are the distinctions? What are the differences? What makes feminine, masculine, masculine? It seems like a really basic question to be asking, but given, I think if talking at this level, we're really talking about the first principles. So it seems as though without going there, we can't really build anything else on it.
Yeah. I think let's say 2 big things. One is that the masculine holds the pattern and the feminine makes it matter. So the masculine is what patterns everything. It holds within it the codes, if you will. This is how to be structured. This is how this is the blueprint. The feminine is that which takes the blueprint and then makes it into matter and makes it matter, determines that it does matter. So it's makes it into matter, makes it tangible, practical, makes it substantive in many ways, and then also decides that it matters or it doesn't matter at the same time, right? That's one aspect. So pattern versus and matter. Another aspect.
Can I ask a quick question about what you've just said there? I often like to go look at things through the biological lens, almost to kind of check back against, as it were.
Yes. That's a beautiful way.
I love what you've just that completely makes sense. What you've just said about the making matter. Of course, we think about a woman, what happens with conception, creating the baby, all of that makes sense. But would you be able to, through that lens, talk about what you just said about the pattern and the masculine holding the pattern?
Through that lens of the body?
Yes, biologically, yeah.
Yeah, well, that whole, it's like that, the penetrative aspect of the masculine in terms of literally impregnating the feminine with that essence and saying, it can't happen without it. Whatever is gestated doesn't happen without the masculine penetration. And then subsequent to that, then creation comes forth.
Right.
But that is also from one thing, 10,000 things. You can see that same thing happening in any field of endeavor that basically humans get together and do. It's men build because of women, basically. And act in certain ways and do things, whether it's building a highway or a skyscraper or fighting a war. It's it's always connected to the feminine.
Because the feminine in some way decided it mattered. Right? And so if we look at that biologically, one of the things, there's a few ways that you can see it. One is that they've seen that every man that a woman has ever slept with, his DNA, his biomatter is forever a part of her, right? That's his patterning. He's always giving his pattern, right? They have also looked at in utero that the sperm, and specifically the male DNA, is responsible for the creation of the amniotic sac and the placenta, right?
Oh.
And so we're looking again and seeing that patterning, right? We also recognize that it's really interesting because without that egg being fertilized, we will say it does not matter and our body will get rid of it, right? That's what menstruation is. This doesn't, without the pattern, it doesn't matter, basically.
Yeah.
It can go away.
Oh,
right?
yes.
But when we receive the pattern and we receive the pattern deeply, then our bodies receive it, and then we begin to put structure around the pattern that is being replicated, and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it develops and it becomes a baby, right? And so you can see it over and over again that, yeah, he has the pattern, I make it matter. The masculine has a tendency, it goes more towards the realm of the constructive, meaning that I am going to take what is and I will make things out of it. And the feminine goes more towards the realm of the creative. I will take something that isn't and make it into something that is. Right? So there's that. That's why women have a tendency to really love baking and things like that. That's like totally transformative, right? I took the eggs and the flour, now it's a cake. It doesn't look anything like what it was, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to cooking, men have a tendency more so to be chefs, which is I am taking the ingredients and I am putting them together and I'm making something that is more than the sum of its parts, yes, but it's still more, cooking is more constructive, baking is more creative, right? And so you can kind of see that in that realm, right? And then the last, or the third leg on that, it's not the last one, but the third major pillar of the difference between the masculine and the feminine is in relationship to each other. And this is perhaps the most mysterious aspect. It's the one that I believe that we are the founders of saying this, because I've never heard anyone else say it, but it's simply this: wherever he is, I'm not. And wherever he's not, I am. And so it's the initiative and responsiveness. So it's not that responsiveness means that I do nothing. It's basically in response to him. So if you look at it like a dance where we're facing each other, right? If he takes a step forward, what do? I must take a step back. If he takes a step back, now he's no longer there. I take a step forward. Now I am. And so there's this beautiful, and the metaphor of the dance works so well there, because what we're saying is it's that dance in life. And that's actually what makes our business successful, and why we don't argue and we teach and we facilitate the things that we facilitate, is because it's really that in a nutshell. Wherever he is, I'm not. And wherever he isn't, I am. And so we're always covered 360 degrees.
Oh, I love that. I'm learning Kung Fu, and last night's lesson was really coming to mind, you talking, because it's so about that movement of energy and they actually do use the terms yin and yang in it. And often it will be a transfer where someone's bringing power and the other person yields and is soft. It's very rare that you'd be meeting power with power or softness with softness. And I can so see how, again, is the utility of that, is the fact this makes sense, it works. And again, we get to have our feelings about this, but as you're talking, I can feel it in my body of like, of course. It really makes sense. So let's dive into some of the things that were coming up for members of my group when I said getting you on the show, and chances are it's going to be a bit of a triggering topic. What comes up for you and I popped into the group a quote that you'd said, Namaste, which really was what we were just talking about here, in terms of, you were saying if you feel that you need to have an inner masculine, it's because you don't understand the true power of the feminine, something like that. And a couple of the points that members said that I really want to ask you about were, the first one was, how about people, for example, that are gay or non-binary, or indeed a powerful woman like myself, this is the person writing, who's done a lot of work to honor both masculine and feminine within in all the ways. Like, what do you say to that? I feel that what you've been talking about, yin yang, actually does cover the last part of her question. A powerful woman like herself, who's done a lot of work to honor both masculine and feminine within. What about, and I know that you've been part of, I heard you talk about, you've been part of, for example, the gay community. So I would love to get your sense of that. I'm not even going to ask you a question, just please talk to that subject.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in the LGBT, now QIA plus community. I really feel that oftentimes people, in an attempt to make everyone feel comfortable and confident and accepted, we just can go too far in the other direction. I do not know what it is to be a lesbian. Okay. I have no idea what that feels like. I have no idea what that feels like to feel like my observed and recorded sex at birth is not how I want to live my life. I want to do something different. I want to be something different than what this body is that I came in here with. I have no idea what that experience is like. And so it would be foolish to assume that me not having that experience, that I can in some way make space for those who are having that experience by pretending as if we are the same. We're not. We're not. We're having a very, and I mean, we have and have had people who identify as part of the LGBTQIA community in our classes, in our spaces. We've coached, we've mentored quite extensively. And what they say is, first, thank you. I really appreciate what you're saying about this, because I don't hear anybody saying this. And what you're saying is, I can feel that is true. And those of us who are different, we are the radical minority, and everyone should not change to try to make space for that. We're doing something different, and we should just allow that, you know? So what we say is, we've had people who thought they were white, and I say thought because they came back and said, wow, you know what? I thought I was a two-spirit. I thought I was non-binary, and now I realize that I'm not. It basically was me fighting against an aspect of myself. And that's what they've taken from this journey. We've also had people who said, you know, knowing this actually clarifies for me what I am, as well as what I'm not. And so, you know, what we leave it up to is, because no one's a monolith and no one can speak on behalf of a whole community, I believe that everybody who is in that community, and that's as diverse as anybody else, decides where this fits for them. And what that truth is, how it lands for them, and where. And we have been amazed at some of the ways that people are like, this is wow, this is amazing, and this makes my own experience so much clearer and cleaner, and I get it, and I'm so glad that this is out here. And you know, wow, absolutely, what you're saying is true, and I wish this was taught more, and I wish more people understood this, because then if they are something different, it's easier to actually see.
Yes, there's a clarity. Yes,
yeah, which is how it works in cultures where they have, you know, when people talk about, oh, there's cultures that have more than two genders, right? But no one has ever really I haven't seen people really look at how they decide that a person is that other gender when their biology is obviously either male or female, right? How they decide that they're that other gender. Well, how that is decided by the community, how they realize that is by having that person be that which they are as far as their sex, live that, experience that, be surrounded, be immersed in it. And if that does not sit well, if it doesn't land, if they aren't being that, then they assume it's not actually a different gender. What it is a different position in society. So you aren't going to hold the position of a female, a feminine being in this society. You are going to hold a different position because of what's showing up for you. So it actually arises from the clarity of that distinction, not from this kind of just making it very messy and mashing it together. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that makes so much sense. So much sense. So much of our work is based on what we can see looking at indigenous cultures, that, you know, that is what's true for us as humans, how we've lived throughout time. And you're quite right. It's another example of how we can take things out of context and try and make them fit because we like that, rather than recognizing it only makes sense from within that cultural. And again, so much of it is community based. Like you just said, it isn't this separate, oh, I'm a separate being who gets to live this way. The role only makes sense within the community, within the culture. Take that out and it no longer makes sense. Yeah, I love that. I'd love to hear if you've got anything to add to that, Richard. I love what you said there, Namaste.
I think that when we look at people, we are all individuated slices of infinity. And we're so powerful and so amazing in so many different ways. And when we look at each other through the lens of celebrating those aspects that are uniquely you, as opposed to engaging in a fight over who's right about what, then the whole discussion, the whole landscape changes. And that's why I think there's so many people in, alt communities or LGBTQIA communities that when they get to know us and what we stand for and what we say, they can feel the love in that. Then I entirely celebrate you for being you. And there's a period at the end of that sentence. Not a comma, not a but, not a semicolon. It's a period. I celebrate you for being you. Do your thing. I love you being you. There's no, and then it's like, well, wait a minute. I'm so used to fighting that I'm totally surprised by the fact that there is no fight here.
Yeah, completely. It just feels as though everything we're talking about here is about just allowing what is without the need to defend it, force it down other people's throats, make someone else wrong, just whatever feels true, whatever's working, that. I really love that. The other question that one of my members asked was, I think I'll actually read it out actually, because I think there's a lot in what she said. Here's only a few lines. I found it incredibly helpful to work with the ideas of my inner father and inner mother, perhaps because I grew up with both. There's been little else as healing as recognizing what I needed from my father and giving it to myself, and what I needed from my mother and giving it to myself. To me, this is the essence of the divine masculine, divine feminine within, simply that acknowledgement that I have connection to both within me and the capacity to give and receive what I need from both, even though, yes, I am a woman. So I think it's fairly clear what she's asking there. I think it's a really great point as we're doing this work to integrate what's in shadow, look at perhaps those aspects that we didn't perhaps get from our within our upbringing. That makes sense what she's saying. I'd love to know your sense of, and particularly I think this is a kind of add-on question, but it may make sense for me to ask it now. When you're in a couple as you are, where you have got these beautiful complementary counterparts where you don't need to kind of occupy the other pole. For someone like my member talking like that, and on top of that being single, how would you say is helpful as a kind of, she's saying it's been really beneficial for her to understand it like that. What would you suggest would be equally powerful? A different way of holding that, a different way of being, given though, like your sense of this.
Well, the first thing I would say is that those things are extraordinarily powerful. But what we're talking about there isn't masculine or feminine essence. It is a way of understanding my worldview through the lens of what my father or mother has imparted to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm honoring that memory by saying, yes, I got it. I understand. And so I'm going forward because I know that this was going to work because my dad told me, my mom told me. But in so doing, if I followed the lessons that my mother told me, that isn't my actions as a man are still masculine actions. I'm acting as a man. I'm not part feminine because the lesson that it was taught by my mom came through my mother.
Mm.
So that's
and when you say lessons, if I could just clarify, you mean lessons that could be seen as positive or negative, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
things that perhaps you were given that you are glad you were given, and vice versa. Yeah. Yeah.
The other part of it is that one of the things that we teach is that if one is single, then the best and highest way to continue to go through this life is to make it your business to find your counterpart so that you can experience that thou to your I. And in so doing, that complementary energy makes for a better life overall in so many different ways that you literally cannot see when you are single. So a lot of our work involves working with single individuals so that they can find their counterpart and then start to see their lives bloom and expand in so many different ways.
And until you find that person, what you want to do is seek out opportunities to create relationships and support and true intersectionality between you and men as a woman, or if you're a man, between you and women, which means that because there are so many people who don't grow up with both parents active and living in the same household, they don't have both sexes represented in their household in a loving way, so what ends up happening is that you really are projecting into the opposite sex things that you assume about them or that you presume about them, because in lieu of a really deep, rich relationship with them, and that's having that relationship non-romantically can really pave the way for having it romantically. In other words, if you don't trust men in general, the idea that I will find one who I can trust is based on the idea that because most of them are not trustworthy. So you want to start doing that work, and really kind of, how can I connect with men in my business or my enterprise if I have a company? How am I respecting them and listening to their unique way of communicating and talking about things and offering things and vice versa? What are the insights that are uniquely theirs that I don't have, and I don't feel lessened by that, which is to me a byproduct of being truly powerful, is that I'm not lessened by seeing that you have something that I do not have. I'm actually magnified and amplified for that, because our connection amplifies whatever it's wanting to do within a romantic partnership and also outside.
Oh, I love what you've just said. I just got a glimpse of something I don't think I've seen as clearly as this before. So I had a slightly unusual upbringing in that I was raised by a single father. So I did have a mother, but most of my life we lived nowhere near each other. So primarily my kind of primary caregiver was a man. And my relationship, both with my father, but men generally, had been very, very positive. So I was kind of role modeled and I guess related to men in the way that you're saying, very naturally, because that was the experience I grew with. For me, the work was very much more understanding myself as a woman and actually trusting the feminine. So quite a different journey to most. And I was just seeing it, something in what you were saying around exactly what you said, understanding myself, whether it be in romantic or non-romantic relationship, as a complement. And my work was to not trust men, but kind of recognize myself as that complement. Like I could see the gifts and the power and beauty and the magnificence in men. And in the masculine, for me, it was being able to recognize, oh, I have something that's not that.
Exactly. That is huge.
Yes.
That is huge, especially in work environments, because even to this day, even though, we've seen the whole the feminine rising and women starting, women understanding, I'd say in the last decade or so, I've seen women start talking about, we don't have to be like men to be successful in business, and we should have things being very heart-led, but there's still a bit of a distortion there, because it's okay, I can't outman a man, I can't be that masculine, but what I am is the new paradigm, how everyone should be.
Yeah.
Right? It's better.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still a little bit distorted, because so now there's this expectation. Well, that's old paradigm. How men have done things is old paradigm. And now we're stepping into this new paradigm, which is
the future is female.
The future is female. It's all about how we do things, and we do things very heart-led. And again, it comes to me, well, effectiveness. We've had our enterprise for about over a decade now. And before that, I was in HR. Richard was in diversity at some of the largest companies in our country. And in seeing that, I would say, no, it's not that the way that the masculine does things is old paradigm and is no longer working. The new paradigm is actually men and women working together. That's the new paradigm. And working together in diverse ways where they have distinct positions that are offering both respect and appreciation to the distinctions between them, not the expectation of homogeneity between them. So in other words, yes, I show up with my intuition and my heart, full heart, open-hearted, very creative way of looking at things, and holistic, right? The feminine has a tendency to be very holistic. I see all of the things, right? And I bring that into the enterprise. And Baba shows up differently. Yeah,
being very more linear than holistic, and looking at things from how is this going to work, and how do these things work together, and what problem are we really trying to solve here? Things like that, which are aspects that many times are demonized, and saying, well, everything doesn't have to be a problem; it needs to be solved. Well. If you're going to celebrate the holistic view, then the linear, there's some utility there, right? Because in many instances, you don't know what you don't know. And when we are working together, we have that 360 view where it all is covered, instead of going back and trying to do it again because we didn't do it right.
Right. And the requirement, what that requires, is that when the other person is bringing in the thing that is diverse, that is different, that is distinct from how you see it, instead of seeing that as an opportunity to need to validate and prove that the way you see it is the right way, or instead of feeling like they must be attacking your way because their way is so polar to yours, right? Because the masculine and feminine are a polarity. So his way of looking at it is going to be 180 out, right? So where he is, I am not. I'm in a completely different space. Beautiful. Now, here's where the game begins. We take both of those things and we treat it like a puzzle. And we, when you're putting together a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, you're like turning the pieces around to see how does this fit? Instead of being like, no, my puzzle piece is the best. This is the only way, it's like, well, no, they do fit together. So let me relax and stop being triggered, stop being resistant, stop feeling attacked, stop feeling displaced, stop worrying about my need to secure my place, and instead say, okay, but how is he right? How is he correct? And if what I'm saying is correct and what he's saying is correct, how would they fit together? And that's where the magic is.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. I love this so much. I think I mentioned you before, the co-founder of Primal Happiness is a man. And so when we first started working together 7 years ago, I think we had an intuitive sense of what you're saying. And then over the years, slowly, sometimes with a lot of resistance and triggers. We've slowly got to the place that you're talking to now, where, and it's not to say some days it isn't a bit rougher than others, but the vast majority of the time we are looking for what you're describing here and recognizing that we can bring just vastly different, completely different things, gifts, way of seeing things, perspectives to everything that we create. And it's again, the sense of just even thinking about it allows me to relax. It's like I don't have to have it all. What you talked about, that kind of 180-degree difference, and then together it creates a 360 when we're not trying to kind of like make our 180 degrees fit everything.
Right, exactly.
Which makes no sense when you say it, but hey, it's so tempting to believe you can be all things. So yeah, I love everything you say.
Right, that you have to be all of it.
Yes.
You know, and you hear women talk about being overwhelmed and exhausted because of that feeling. And one of our foundational needs as humans is for a sense of place. So knowing that I am uniquely feminine, and that is my place, that is literally my place, and that can never be displaced by a man ever. We complement each other. There's something about that just kind of is like, oh,
shoulders can drop into that.
Yeah, I don't have to try to be what he is at all. Goodness, okay, great.
Yeah. That's something off the to-do list. Don't have to be a man today.
I am enough as I am in this way, and how beautiful is that?
Well, that's kind of one of those things is hiding in plain sight, right? That understanding that if you are celebrative of who you really are, then you will look at the truth of it, which is trying to be a man if you're not a man is exhausting.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and depleting and not at all fun. You know?
Yeah.
So you come to that realization, it's like your shoulders drop and you're like, oh, okay, that's what was wrong. I'm just trying to be something that I'm not.
If I can just give like just a little taste of that. I can remember when Bob and I were first dating, you want to call it that, and I was asking him something about something that needed to be done. I was asking him, did he want to do it? And you know, and if you don't want to do it, you know, it's okay. I can handle it. It was something for me, you know. And I was like, well, I can do it, you know, if you don't want to do it. And he's like, no, I'll take care of it. And I was like, I know, but I know that that's a lot of work and it's hard, you know, and I wouldn't want to do it, you know. And he said, we run on different fuel. What's hard to you isn't hard to me. And it was like, it was this huge aha moment for me, because I was like, oh my goodness, yes, I have literally been projecting onto you things that are difficult for me. Like, oh, that must be so hard for you. And he's like, that's not hard. Now, the stuff that you're doing, that I can't even imagine, like doing that thing, you know, the feminine things. He's like, I couldn't even, you know, but because we're so different and we run on different fuels. So what's easy to me and natural and comes naturally to me is foreign to him. And what's easy for him and comes easy to him is foreign and difficult for me. So.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, this makes so much sense. I want to ask you a question, but I've got a sense that it's going to open a whole can of worms. Not that that's bad. I just don't think we've got time to sort through the whole can of worms. So I'm going to ask a question, but also say, I'm really happy to come back and then explore this in another episode if you're up for it. Because I don't think we're going to do it fully justice. So I'm going to ask you the question. So let's kind of like, just because I think it's going to be there, it's certainly here for me, but I'm sure it's going to be here for listeners. So I don't want to kind of just leave it hanging altogether, but let's do what we can to just start it. So what we're talking about here can very much be looked at through the lens in as if it's going backwards, you know, the typical cliche way of talking about, you know, isn't this going back to 1950s, you know, housewife, breadwinner? And I know you're absolutely not talking about that. But what I would say is it's because of the work that I've done to be integrated to the point that I am, that I don't need to create a relationship like that. And I quite like the way David DYAD talks about the sort of 3 stages of relationship. So he would call that sort of stage 1, then stage 2 would be that kind of very independent, equality, women can do anything a man can do, vice versa. And then a stage 3 is much more the dynamic we're talking about here, where there is this just real beauty, complementary nature of the two working together. And I know that I think I've heard you talk something about codependence through a different lens before as well. That's just popped into my mind. So if someone was just brand new to this work, hadn't, for example, done anything in the realm of, whatever you want to call it, spirituality work, shadow work, personal development, how would they not enter into that kind of old-fashioned, not particularly expansive way of relating to men? I don't know if I've asked that very well, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm smiling because we were just talking about this yesterday. It actually came up in a teaching we did yesterday. This is absolutely not that, and it is easy for people to go into that because we're using the same words. And we can only use the words that we have at our disposal, and so we start there. But what makes this different is, if I was to put a couple of words around it, it would be the authenticity, the transparency, and the reality. And by that I mean that when we look at, first off, we have to understand that when we're talking about how people had their marriages back in the 50s, and unless you were married back in the 50s, it's somewhat of a projection, right? It's like, this is the stories I've been told. I don't really know, but I'm assuming that this is how those people must have felt, right? And we usually take the stories of the people who were the most unhappy and use them as the example, versus all the people who were blissfully happy being the example. Okay, but let's just go with that. Right? The idea that, so women were, just the little lady at home, clutching her pearls, and he comes home and she's like, here's your cocktail, darling. And, and it's all very one-dimensional. Okay. Let's say that we take that. The difference here is that there is nothing about me that Baba does not know. There is when we talk about the creation of this kind of relationship, it is not parsley and window dressing, kind of like adornment. What we're talking about is radical acceptance and radical revelation to your partner of everything that you really are. And so that in of itself makes it 180 out. In other words, I'm not acting like I'm submissive to him and I'm just his little wife and I'm just this one-dimensional thing, and I have this whole plethora of stuff that is meanness that he doesn't see, that I'm hiding and subverting to be in this relationship. It's actually just the opposite, which is that I am bringing all of my meanness to be in this relationship. And it is from that place that we connect. He's bringing all of his hisness into the relationship. Not at one time, but forever, meaning all that as we are constantly changing and evolving, that's why we've been together for 18 years, because it's we always say, like, you get a new body every year, you get a new self, every 3 to 6 months. It's like people who knew 3 months ago, they probably don't know you anymore, if they haven't talked to you.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly bringing all of that into the relationship. And that is what makes the difference between it being a role that you are acting, and versus it being an expression of your divinity that you are embodying.
I think you could have easily done a mic drop at that point. Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think that is very true. And I think the difference between the projection that we look at, the lens, we're looking at the past, and what is happening now is that we always say, you know, effectiveness is the measure of truth. And probably for the first time in history, in order for you to have this type of polarity between the masculine and feminine and have and embody that type of relationship, that's going to require a level of intentionality that previously people haven't had to have. You know, if we look back in the past, it was just expected that you're going to get married. You're going to, you know, you're going to be single for a bit, and then it's going to go on. You're going to have your person. But now you're going to have to make that part of your life way. It's not going to happen organically. It's not going to just drop out of the sky into your lap. You're going to have to work at it. Why? Because, you know, the data shows that by 2030, most women over 53% of women between the ages of 20 and 50 will never be married and never bear children.
That's what the studies are showing.
That's what the studies are showing right now. We are approaching that at a rapid clip. So for those who will be successful in establishing that relationship and having that partner and having that life, you're going to have to work at it. And sooner is better than later. And being effective in that and winning that particular game is going to require focus, time, and energy.
Oh, yes. That's the thing, isn't it? It is a spiritual path. It is the work. I mean, certainly speaking from my perspective, I think I shared when we spoke last time that there was a point at which I had this recognition. So going back however many years ago, I had this very clear call to devote myself to embody the feminine. And as I've deepened into that work, it's become my work, as in it's called forth for me all the places I need to integrate, all the things I kind of need to bring into my awareness have been in service of that. It is the work itself. And so I don't get to, even if it was a possibility for me to kind of go to that cliche, what we were just talking about, 1950s housework, it's just not possible, housewife. It's just not possible because it demands of me to be whole. It demands, like going back to what you were saying, Namaste, it demands me to be in my fullness in order to be in that devotion. And so it's not as though you're saying, it's not like you're going out and preaching on a street corner. Okay, women just be women, men be men. Get on with it. You're showing people a whole body of work, which is whatever I don't know how you'd name it, but it is a spiritual path. It is the work. And that's just what you're saying there, Richard. It's a choice. It's not going to be that people are going to naturally be able to be in their fullness without choosing this, committing to that work, which will then take them into being these full, whole men and women that can then relate to each other.
Exactly. It's needed. When we talk about something, we need to help the planet, and we need to, we need to care about that, and really, 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 really need, when we consider it our job to end the battle of the sexes. To literally not just have a ceasefire. We don't want a ceasefire. What we are here to do is to return men and women to each other, because if men and women return to each other, our whole world will change from that place. And the next generation will be most impacted by that. Why? Because who's the most impactful people to a generation? The parents.
Yeah.
And that's still a man and a woman. That is required. And so it's always the simplest thing that people want to leave behind in their quest for progress. And no matter how much we progress, we haven't progressed, and it's not ours to progress beyond having this human experience. This is the experience we're here to have. So let's make it the most amazing we possibly can, right?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, we're out of time, but this has been a delight. I've managed to get in most of the things I wanted to ask you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I know you run all sorts of amazing programs. Where's the best place for people to find out more about you and what you're offering?
InfiniteCouple.com.
Yeah, InfiniteCouple.com is our website. We're on Facebook. Follow Richard and Sri Namaste more. We're on every means of social media as the Infinite Couple. So anywhere you go on social media, you will find us there. Just look up the Infinite Couple and we're there.
Thank you so much. And again, I just love your transparency and like this obvious, tangible, visceral sensation I have speaking to you. It's just so open and relaxed. There's no sense of, this is how it must be seen and must be understood. There is a real sense of openness that you bring. So, so enjoyable to speak to you both. Thank you.
We enjoyed this as well. Thank you so much for having us.
Wow, what a show. Here are my takeaways. We might not like the idea that men have no inner feminine and women have no inner masculine, but it doesn't say anything about whether it's true. I love how they said that utility is a measure of truth. Men and women both have the whole range of yin and yang, and we don't need to co-opt the masculine or feminine from the other gender in order to be whole. And lastly, this isn't about regressing to the cliched shadow of 1950s style marriages. This is about relating in a whole and authentic way where all parts of us are welcome and valued. If you'd like to get notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 332. And if you're a man feeling the call to wake the wild masculine, go along to primalhappiness.co/WTWM to claim your space. And if you don't want to miss out on forthcoming episodes, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS of choice and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get each episode straight to your device as soon as it comes out. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again in September.